Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of break this into a few slices. One, it's we're going to look at the entire exam process, and then how to prepare for the exam. We'll review some of the ICF core competencies and the code of ethics, and then after that, we'll look at some of the exam sample questions. So in this sequence, so it kind of help you, refreshing your knowledge of the ICF competencies as well as the code of ethics. Okay. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. If you have any questions along the way, just feel free to drop in. Okay. Let me share this. Okay. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll begin first by explaining a little bit about the ICF Credentialing Exam. In the past, it's known as the CKA, or the Competency Knowledge Examination, or accreditation. Now it's known as the ICF Credentialing Exam. You can think of it like ICE. And this entire page, ICF constantly updates them. So as of today, last night, there's a new update. So later I'll be sharing with you some new changes to this exam. But otherwise, the entire structure of the exam is going to be the same, at least for the next several years, until a new revision happens. So here, regardless of whether the coach is going for ACC, PCC, MCC, they will need to do this exam towards the end of the application process. So after attending our level 1 program or level 2 or level 3 program, then you will need to get this. So very much like you are waiting in process right now for ICF to review your level 1 certification, and then ICF would email you with the ICF credentialing exam link for you to make the application. Okay, so the key thing about the exam, a lot of people ask, what's the purpose of this exam? So you have the coaching recording, which focuses on your ability and your competence as a coach to coach. The credentialing exam measures other aspects of your knowledge and understanding of competency, which cannot be demonstrated in a coaching session. Things like code of ethics, things like coaching mindset, which is a bit harder to measure within a 30 to 60-minute recording. So that's why you see here that this part here is what is the reason for this new credentialing exam, which is the ability to apply ICF definition of coaching, updated ICF core competencies, and the ICF code of ethics against a predetermined standard. So what is this standard? This standard is against the ICF credentialing standards of ACC PCC MCC. So they've sat down together with a group of coaches, and they had this people actually kind of designing some of these questions, providing inputs. And after much analysis and after much pilot testing, they've kind of formulated this new credentialing exam for the purpose of refining the integrity of the examination process. So what would then happen is that they need a way to measure across the entire spectrum of coaches, regardless of which country they belong to or what language they use. So that's why they use what we call SME experts to develop this to have a scoring standard. So during the pilot test, so I was involved in one of those pilot tests, and based on our scores, based on our answers, they kind of do a standardized or little standard to set a benchmark against. And this standard and this ICF credentialing exam is now partnered with Pearson's. So they would be the one delivering through their online test centers and also in-person test centers. So in all countries, or in most developed countries, there would be a physical Pearson test center. And Pearson does a lot of exams, not just ICF. They also do medical exam. They also do like your GMAT, a lot of the other testings around the world, professional testings they also conduct. So you can choose an on-site Pearson VUE testing center or at home. Okay. However, when you're doing it at home, you just have to be mindful that the environment is not noisy, and you just need to know that you have to have a camera where the proctor will be observing your every move. So the sound, they will scan the environment, they will look at what's happening for you in the environment. If there's any people walking around, they will ask you that that's not a suitable environment for you to do the exam. Okay, so either at home or on-site. My usual recommendation between the on-site or the proctor examination is just go for the on-site where possible, because it provides you enough space to not to worry about what might happen at your own home or the Wi-Fi connection or something happening. So at the exam center, if there's any emergency, you can always raise your hands. The proctor will be there to support you in any possible way. Okay. Now, the exam has a total of 81 situational judgment items. That is as per the last update. Later, I will share with some new updates. And each one of these exam items has a scenario. Okay, so they will kind of describe a scenario, and then there's 4 corresponding options for you to choose. And you have to select the best action or the worst action for each one of these scenarios. So it's really much scenario-based question rather than knowledge-based question. In the previous iteration of the exam, it's a lot of knowledge. They'll ask you questions about the competencies, knowledge-based. But now it's really much application-based, which is scenario-based. So the 4 options are the same, but you got to select, you got to drag and drop whether you feel that that's the best or that's the worst action the coach should take. Okay. Now, it's one interesting point to note that although more than one response may represent a reasonable response to the scenario, what this means is that out of the 4 response, there could be 1 or 2 or 3 that could be correct, but they may not be the best. They could be the right action, but they may not be best. Or there could be 1 or 2 that are not good actions, but there's one that's worse. So that's why you have this out of the range of this 4. It's over a spectrum of the worst, over spectrum of the worst, of the best. So you just choose between what is the best in that options and what is the worst in the option.
But always only one answer.
Yes, there's only one answer. So for example, if I select this option A as my best action, I cannot choose that for the worst option. So in the past, it's you clicking, but now I believe they have a drag system where if you drag option A to the best action, you cannot drag option A to the worst action. So you have to choose between one. So if option A is selected, you can only choose between B, C, and D. Okay. So once it's done, then you'll receive a credit score for each of the correct action identified. The good thing is that you're not there's no negative scoring. So even if you select the wrong answer, there's no negative scoring. So you notice here that you're not penalized for any incorrect answers, which is a good thing. But sometimes I feel that maybe it's good to be penalized for the wrong answer. Yeah. As such, what this means is that even if you select a good action, so say you have 2 choices, right? Which is the good and the best action. But even if you select the good action, you still get 0 points if you don't select the best action. So in the past, or in other exam settings, not ICF, but other exam settings, if you choose a good action, you may get a 0.5 score, and then if you choose the best action, you may get a full score. But in ICF situation, they kind of determine that it's a 1 or 0 thing. Again, it's subject to the updates as they go along the whole process. So as of now, they have a scale of 200 to 600 points, and the passing score is about 460. So that's about 70% to pass. So you may say, well, why is it so strange? 200 to 600 points score. How do they do that? So that's all done in correlation with Pearson and the exam experts who have determined that this skill would be a good reasonable skill to assess the coaches. Okay. And then the basis of the exam is all in English, but there are other languages. But the other languages are based against on the translation aid. So what this is that there's a translation aid that pops up for you to read based on the various language choices, and then you will still go back to the English one and drag and drop. So you still need to know a little basic English to navigate the whole portal. In the past, there were situations where coaches who had absolutely zero understanding of English and they couldn't navigate the translation aid properly. So I think over time, ICF or the Pearson centers would be able to assist if such situations were to arise. Yeah.
I mean, in the end, it would be better going in completely in English, right? I mean, makes it maybe easier.
Yeah, you can just go completely in English. Yeah. Okay, so usually I would just recommend just go in English. It's easy, and it's good to kind of review the ICF competencies, code of ethics, the documents in English, and you can also look at it in the relevant translation, say for example in German or in other languages as well, as a comparison. But the one that you want to focus on is in the way the English expressions are written, right? So although in different parts of the world, English may be used very differently, but we want to look at the way it's structured based on the ICF standards. Okay. Now, for those coaches or learners who are excited to learn more about how ICF designs this passing score, they have this thing called the Angov methodology. So this is where they kind of benchmark the scale of what constitute a pass, what constitute a fail, and then they use experienced coaches as a baseline to measure that against. So it's a long methodology, but if you like to read more about it, you can do so. Okay. So so far the exam stats hasn't been so good based on the statistics, right? So you can see that in 2023 there were about close to 10,000 candidates who have taken the test, but only 75% passed on the first exam. And then out of the 25%, 12% of the candidates who pass on subsequent exam would be the next portion of things, with a total passing rate of about 87%. So that would mean that maybe in 100 you have about 2 or 3 coaches who, or about 20 coaches who didn't pass the exam at the first or second attempt. So which means they would have to do 3 or 4 or 5 times. As of this year, I think there are more and more candidates who do not pass the exam. Now, mainly based on my experience has been the issue with the way the phrasing is done or the words, and also the lethargy, which means that as the coach goes through the whole process, they get tired by the end of the third hour, fourth hour. So the brain kind of shuts off and they are a little bit more tired, so they're not able to read and think properly. So that could also constitute a challenge. But mainly it has to do with language, because many of coaches, English may not be their first language. For example, in Singapore, even though the business language is English, everyone speaks English in Singapore, but I had a batch of learners. There were about 13 or 14 or 15 of them. Only 3 of them passed on the first attempt. All of them failed.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so all of them failed. So the reason they said was that the questions were very, very close. They couldn't really identify what is the difference between the correct answers or the worst answers. If it felt to them that the phrasing is similar. So it could be a case where in Singapore, when English is used, um, they use it very, very interchangeably. So at the back of the learner's mind, when they read it, the understanding appears similar. Whereas if I use this in a Western part of the world, maybe the English understanding might be a little different. So this has to do also with the languaging or the phrasing of certain phrases. Whether this needs additional refinement, that's something for ICF to take on in future. So far that has been the case. In the Japanese learners, we have about 50% pass rate or less on the first attempt, um, as of now. So, and I had one learner who had to do it like 4 times, and this is his 5th time. So later on tonight, I'll be revising again the competencies with him to help him gain a deeper understanding. And I noticed this again, it has to do with language, because when they turn on the translation aid, they read it in their language, and when they look at the English, it gets confusing because the translation may not capture the essence of the original language. Whereas in Singapore, even though they read it in English, but it's very, very different from the way they speak English in the Singapore context. So these are some considerations that we cannot do. Yeah. So not to worry. I think you should be able to pass in the first attempt.
That's the target, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or maybe 100%. I always challenge coaches, just go for 100% on your first attempt. Okay.
Okay.
So now there are some legal restrictions, but this has to do with mainly the US-based organizations and other countries, such as these countries, who has some challenges to taking the exam. So if you're based in Cuba, Iran, North Korea, Russia, Sudan, Syria, Crimea, Donuts, and some parts of Ukraine, this will be a challenge for you, right? So other than that, everything can be done in
The
person.
usual sanction countries.
Yeah, the usual sanction. And in China as well. So China, you have to do it in person. So far, learners in China, they go to the exam center and take the exams. Yeah. Okay. Now, there are also some things to consider if you want to know why ICF kind of changed from the previous exam to this exam. The key essence here is that they want to kind of raise the standards of the accreditation as a global gold standard for supporting coaches and the community of coaches as well. So this new exam, it's actually forms like an integrity and a baseline for uh, what could be fair and equal opportunity for all coaches, regardless of which background or regardless of which school they come from. Right. So this part here will be key for us, right, to have a fair, equal opportunity to demonstrate their knowledge and skill in coaching. Okay. And also it's to protect any potential misuse or malpractice or copying or distribution of exam questions. Yeah, because sometimes some people may kind of memorize the question and they would go back and say, okay, this is the correct answer, that's the wrong answer. So as such, after doing the exam, ICF will not release the answer sheet, so you will not know which you had right or which you had wrong. Again, this is to protect the any kind of misuse of the knowledge that or the pre-knowledge that you get. So to create a fair ground for everyone. Yeah. Okay. The key thing here again is to improve security on the exam, raising validity, integrity, and the value of the credential. So it's not an easy credential to get, but if you get it, you feel that you have gone through a rigorous testing process. Yep. Okay. So
Valuable in a way.
yeah, it's valuable. So I think that's the biggest benefit because in the past the exam is just knowledge based. So some people just memorize them and it's easy for them to pass. But now, you really have to understand the competencies. You really have to dive deeper in your development understanding of competencies. So you can't just do anyhow. Okay. Then there is also one important thing, which is the where the exam will be held. So notice this. Each item contains this scenario with the 4 responses like we mentioned earlier, and there will only be one so-called correct answer for the worst or the best answer. Now, again, this part here, like we mentioned, because you're going through the level 1 or level 2 or level 3 pathways, the entire wait time is about 2 to 4 weeks or 1 to 4 weeks, depending on how fast the ICF staff replies you. Once they reply you, they would send you an email application update on your ICF membership portal. The same parts there. That's when you will click to book an exam slot in the whichever part of the world you'll be in. So I think by the time you receive the email, you should be back in Switzerland, and then you just choose from there. Okay, and once you receive the email, ICF will give you 60 days to schedule and complete the exam. Yeah, and for English-speaking countries, you will be given 3 hours. If you're in other parts of the world, English is not the first language, you get 4 hours. Okay, and people have asked this question: how do they know 3 hours is sufficient? So many people struggle to finish in 3 hours. But again, this is based on ICF judgment, and they had a study to see what is the best time, and they found that 3 hours was about the right time. So the question format, similar for response. And the question, what would the exam questions cover? So it's the competencies, the code of ethics, and the ICF's definition of coaching. So that's all. It's just these 3 documents that we're reviewing later. So the good thing is that it doesn't matter what coaching model, frameworks, techniques that we use, but they will all go back to the common competencies, ethics, as well as the definition of coaching. Okay, and so if you want to find out more about how they did it, was with the SMEs, which means that ICF get a pool of coaches and also external agencies to kind of test the validity of this exam. Okay, and how should you prepare for the exam? Right, you can complete the coach education program, which is what you've done. Running through with us, we went through went through the different sessions together, and reviewing these 3 documents will be important. And as well as reviewing some of the Google Classroom portals that we have, the YouTube videos that I've created as well to support your preparation. Yeah. Okay. Now, if you need to reapply or you need to kind of readjust your appointment time. You have 48 hours before you book. So, for example, if I book for next week, I need this. I have up to 48 hours before to cancel and reschedule. If it's within 48 hours, and if I happen to fall sick, I just need to write into Pearson's or ICF for them to kind of do an exemption. So sometimes things may happen, maybe there's a car accident, maybe there's something that happened at home, and you're not able to meet it within the 48-hour window, just write into ICF. Okay. Now, if we fail on the first attempt, the retake fee is 105 US dollars. Okay. Now, so once you have completed the exam, on the spot, you would have your score. So you know whether you pass on that spot. If you've completed, ICF would then issue you your credential standards, whether it's ACC, PCC, or MCC, within the week of you completing your credentialing exam, which means you will receive your digital badge. You will also receive your cert. Everything will be received via the email as well as your ICF portal. So the good news, the ICF portal. Yeah, so the same place that we went through earlier, where you could see your profile as well as the things to download. So you will be able to see your credential downloads from there. Okay, so the passing score, like we mentioned earlier, is about 70%, and there is no feedback on each question. So a lot of coaches ask, can I have feedback so that I know where to improve on, so I know how to study? However, at this time, there's no feedback on individual items in the exam. Again, ICF's stand is to maintain the integrity. So I would encourage coaches who kind of fail the exam to review the competencies again, think through them before taking the exam. Yeah. Okay. So notice this: if we happen to fail, okay, we have to wait 2 weeks before we take the exam. Any other attempts is about 30 days. Okay, and we can take up to 6 times within a 12-month period from the date of my first attempt. So if I fail the first time, I can take up to 6 times within a 12-month period. So I can study for 2 months and take it in 2 months, take it in. However, if I don't achieve the passing score within the first 12-month period, we can retake the exam up to 6 times in the subsequent period. So every 12-month period, you have to take 6 times, 6 times, 6 times. Yeah.
Probably not necessary.
So hopefully we don't have to activate such a thing. Yeah. Okay. Now, if you need to renew your ICF credential, so your credential lasts 3 years, you need to kind of take it again. Now, if you have done it previously, you don't have to do it. All right. So ICF individuals renewing the ICF credentials will not be required to take the exam as part of the renewal. So you take it one time here. You take it at ACC, you take it at MCC, but in your renewal journey, you don't have to retake the exam. Okay, now this is only for people who have taken the previous CKA, which is the Coach Knowledge Assessment. That was before ICF instituted this back in 2022. So the CKA, it's if you've done it in the past, you have to do the new exam right now if you're applying for PCC. Okay, so yes, if you have taken the updated exam, valid again, if I apply for a credential, okay, so ICF says yes, right? So ICF credentialing exam must be taken with each new application of credential, unless the exam has been passed within 12 months applying of the next credential. So say, for example, you took the exam in August, and within the next 6 months or next 12 months, you apply for your PCC. And during that time, you don't have to take the exam again, but you have that 12-month window. Okay, so good. So at this moment, ACC PCC MCC will be taking the same exam. ICF is working on to kind of break that into ACC is 1, PCC is 1, MCC is 1. But as of now, they are just giving the same exam for everyone.